episode 1 of Sigmund Wolf Defense Podcast. We have a guest on the show. He's from Nashville, Tennessee. Kristin, could you let the listeners know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So guys, congrats on your podcast and thanks for having me. My name is Kristin and I live in Nashville. I'm the owner of She Shoots Training, which is defensive handgun training for women. And I'm also a staff trainer at the Glock store based here in Nashville.
The topic of the episode today is being women, as you and Tanya is in the firearm industry.
Yeah.
So what obstacles did y'all face? What obstacles did y'all have to, overcome?
Yeah. Tanya, do you want to go first or do you want me to give it a whirl?
I'll start.
Yeah.
Okay, so growing up in Chicago, in K-Town, guns were scary. So, my husband has always been into guns and all of that. And he was like, you need to learn how to work them and what they're about. And he was like, guns don't kill people. Stupid people with guns kill people. Like, guns are just not going to pow and shoot you. But, being from where I'm from, it was really scary. So I was like, no, I'm okay. And then I had kids. And then it's like a lot of stuff going on in the world. And it's like, my husband is not going to be able to take me everywhere and do everything with me and the boys. I will have to protect myself if need be and protect the kids. So we trained. We went to get our concealed carry license and things. And, I got more familiar with being a responsible gun owner and just all the basic things. And then I'm here. I love guns. I like to take all my husband's guns, but I love guns.
Yeah, she's constantly taking mine.
I
like that one. I like this one.
Yeah, I love the way you smile so big when you're like, I love guns. I know. So fun fact, I actually I finished high school just outside of Chicago and my nieces are still in the west suburbs. So we're kind of family. So as far as being a female in the industry as an instructor, I think there are a couple, major challenges that I think of, and they're on opposite sides of the spectrum. One is just being taken seriously by other people in the industry as the question that people always ask, and I'm sure you get this too, Tanya, is, so were you in the military? People always assume that a woman teaching firearms has a military or law enforcement background. And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm a civilian training civilians. And so with a lot of the men in the industry, they immediately go, oh, it's just a girl with a gun, So there's been that to overcome. And then I think on the flip side of it is, talking with clients. And for me, I set my business model up to where I'm specifically marketing to women, and my goal is to train other women who may be intimidated by those guys. They're like, dude, were you in the military? But it's on that side of it is really just building credibility, and that can be tricky to do. I feel very fortunate that I have amazing clients and have built up just, I feel really, really fortunate, a very busy business. But that was kind of the first hurdle, was as a new instructor with no military or law enforcement background, how do I convince people that they can come and learn to shoot guns from me? What do I have to offer, right? So when I was first starting out, that was kind of the biggest challenge on that side of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the same here. We went to the range this past weekend, and the first thing the guy tells me, sending the firearms out, getting ready to, load up. And he was like, oh, you guys in shooting competition? We like, no. I was like, oh, no, we have our own company. And he's like, oh, okay. And he blew us off. But his girlfriend was looking like, okay, they got a lot of guns on. So I explained, well, I think did you tell him?
I gave because I saw the way that they were handling their firearms.
Yeah.
Even if you're on the range and you're in your little booth by yourself, I'm like, okay, I think we should give them one of our cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so I passed it to the female, and she looked at it. She was like, thank you. I'm like, yeah, so if you guys want to learn how to, properly, shoot your firearm and handle your firearm, no matter if you're on the range or not, just give us a call and book our class. But based off what you had said too about like starting your company, people taking you serious, we get that a lot, especially like, me being a woman, like, what you know about firearms? What you know? Where you from? What you do? I want to teach first grade. When you teach about firearms, yes, I can do both. I don't have to not to be from the military. I don't have to have police background, none of that. Like, this is something that I'm passionate about. I think that, like you say, everyone should bear arms if they want to, if they choose to, if they want to be safe, especially like with females, because, people are more intimidated with males than females. So trying to get all the females to be like comfortable with firearms and just being safe, and it's like not a bad thing. So I get where you're coming from. It's hard.
Yeah, it can be, right? Especially when I had a client a couple of weeks ago before we went into shoot. It was a husband and wife duo, and the wife was just thrilled to have, a female instructor there with them. And the husband was like, "So what qualifies you to do this?" I was like, well, first of all, I've dedicated the better portion full time of the last 2.5 years to doing nothing but this. Aside from the fact that like I've been shooting since I was little, but I started shooting handguns 15 years ago, and I said, but I've invested a lot of my time and a lot of my resources into the best trainers in the country to work with for myself as an instructor and as a shooter. And he was like, well, okay, so you don't have like military or like police, or I'm like, no. I'm like, is that okay? And he's like, oh yeah, it's okay. And I'm like, okay. So they were in for their second lesson today. They'd been in 2 weeks ago and they'd scheduled this next time. And like once you start working with them and showing like, hey, there's like an actual science to how to do this well, then their brain's just like, like, oh, this like girl knows what she's talking about. So I really often feel that sense of like having to prove myself, especially with the men that I teach. The women are just super stoked that there's another woman they can work with who isn't also just like let's be honest, like many of, at least in this market, the women who are teaching are actually more like dudes anyway. They're just like, they are law enforcement and military backgrounds. And I'm like, I'm a mom, like I like lip gloss and
I know, right?
like doing my hair, like, but also like shooting guns, hey. And so I think a lot of women like shooting with it. Like, I love that you're like, I'm a first grade teacher. Like, what's more relatable to another woman than like, oh, I'm a teacher. I work with, like, I'm a human being. I'm not just like, like G.I. Jane up in here.
Exactly.
And that's the whole thing. A lot of people think, well, a lot of shooters, believe it or not, like when we go to the range, my wife outshoot most of the guys. And I'm like, she's a female. And then my cousin always say, oh, I outshoot you. I'm like, I ain't outshoot my wife yet. So we not even here yet. So that's how I deviate that. Even when we took our CCL, and it was like a handful, of guys, but it was mostly, guys there. But the lady did better than, the males in the class. But by me having, experience with firearms and everything, like, he's like, anyone besides him answers the question. And then they looked at it like, and you can't help your wife. So
So do you guys see this a lot too? I see this trend, and other people I talk to see this too, is that like if there's a couple that comes in, the woman usually shoots better. And I think it has to do with like, we tend to go, okay, this isn't a world that I don't necessarily feel like typically like I'm in. So women tend to put the ego aside a whole lot more than men and really listen and do what they're being told, where men have, and shame on culture for doing this, but men try, or the culture tries to make men feel like you should automatically know how to do this and be good at it.
Yep.
Right. So then they walk in, like, if they don't know what they're doing, like they feel like they have to act like they know what they're doing. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's what our instructor said. It was like, so they kept telling him like, man, your wife is doing amazing. Oh, man, she's going to be good like that. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm paying attention, and like, this is all new. So I want to make sure I know what I'm doing. Yeah. Versus like the males are like, oh yeah, I got this. And it's like, no, you need to learn and listen.
Yeah. So like a thing that I've adopted in my teaching, particularly when I'm working with men, and especially when I'm working with men who come in with, a fair amount of experience, or at least want to tell me like, yeah, like I was in the military, or I was, this, or I shoot this and I do this all the time. I always say to them, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, I love that. I love you have all that experience, but just like starting out here, because I've never shot with you before. Everyone new that comes into the range with me, I treat like a 5-year-old with a gun until I learn that I can treat you differently, until you earn that trust. And I find that that sometimes takes especially the male clients I get, and it really takes and puts them back like, oh, it's okay for me now to not have to be John Wick, right? I can just be a person in here trying to learn. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, you're a 5-year-old with a gun until you can prove to me that I can trust you.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I know when we was down in Nashville, back in May, first thing she said, "You look like a badass." I'm like, yeah.
Is that what you said about me?
Yeah, I was like, do I look like that when I'm carrying?
Yeah, you do.
teaching?
Oh, you can make me blush. Oh, that's so sweet. That was such a cool event. And that one, you know, I was on with Big Dre. I was on his podcast in June, and we were talking about that. And he had some like surprise guests pop on. And you know, to me, the thing about that event was, I mean, there were like a couple hundred people there. It was intense, right?
Yeah.
And like being in charge of the range safety and the line and the team of safeties, like I very definitely felt going into that event, like, okay, like how do I get all of these people who are bringing lots and lots of guns, whom I've never shot with before, and I have no idea what kind of safety protocols or gun handling skills anyone here has, and how do I get them to respect me without being just a complete witch? Like, how do I do this? But it worked out really well, and it was such a cool group, and like everybody was really awesome. Like I'm looking forward to hoping that they do it again, because it was an awesome group, and all of you were like so nice, and like your gun handling was great. Everybody was really respectful, and the event went really smooth. But you know, like I didn't let it show, I hope, but I definitely had some jitters, like, okay, like how do I command respect of these people, you know, these couple hundred people.
Yeah,
like, and make
that was the main thing. But it was just the look. They was like, "Oh, we're not gonna try her."
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's how. Like that's the first thing when we was on the way back. She was like, "Man, she like a badass." Like, oh, I'm like, "Yeah, Laura Croft." And then we cracked jokes, and then she was like, "Angelina Jolie, Mr. and Mrs. Smith." So we was laughing, cracking jokes about that. And then another thing that brought, light to me getting more training when you ask, do anyone have, training, first aid, trauma training? No one did. And I was like, okay, this it's gonna get crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's like such an overlooked part of not just for instructors, but for people carrying. And like we're hosting at the Glock store next weekend, we're hosting a TECC, a 2-day medical training. That's a very intense medical training. It's definitely not for like the average citizen. It's like a pretty intense deal. And the big thing is like people want to carry the gun, but they don't want to carry, like, you might need to solve a different problem, which is like, what if you get shot in the gunfight? Like, now what are you going to do? Right? Like you have to have a solution to that problem, because it doesn't matter if you win the gunfight if you like bleed out on the ground right there.
Yeah.
And it just, that's real talk. Also, it's so funny. You said Laura Croft. You're the second person today to like make that analogy of me to Laura Croft. Like my best friend said that day, and no one's ever said it before. But like today, it's like 2 people are like, "Oh, Laura Croft." I'm like, okay, this might be my Halloween persona now.
Oh, sweet. And then even like just that event alone, it opened my eyes up to like a lot. Even going in the back, walking, I'm like, I was so like, as we young people call it, fanned out, geeked out. Like I was so fanned out. Like I got the video, I'm cheesing, look like my 8-year-old son, ear to ear, like, oh, we real live in the Glock store. And then for me to meet Lenny, I'm hearing his voice. I'm standing there. I'm like, nah, maybe I'm thinking about a video or something. And then all of a sudden, he right there in my face in the truck. I'm like, yo, like, oh, I'm hearing your voice, but I just couldn't figure out where he was at. But that whole event, shout out to RGG, like he did that. Like we took that 7 hours, right? 7 hours, 7 hours drive. Yeah. But yeah, it was a good one. So as far as like when you go into your training scenario situation, I know a lot of guys probably look like, oh, it's a lady instructor, female instructor. How do you like, besides like not being like coming off as, I'm this, I'm that, because they be like, oh, it's like sexist or whatever the case may be. But I even get that a lot, like, oh, you're law enforcement, military. It really don't even matter. I think anyone that's in that field that don't associate with the military or law enforcement, you want to get that question. And then the other question is like, oh, have you shot someone yet? Have you drawn your weapon yet? Like, I didn't get my CCL to draw and pull my weapon. Only time this is gonna get shown is if I'm loading and I'm at the range, or I want someone to perish. And I teach that in the class all the time. Like, it's not a show and tell, and it's not. Oh, I got this. This is why I'm carrying. And if someone comes up to you and asks like, "Oh, what you carrying today?" I wouldn't tell them. Like, figure it out, because it's more like you dropping the ball on something that you shouldn't. And I see it a lot. Like, I've been in parking lots and I see a group of guys, they talking, and one guy lifts up his shirt, showing it off. I'm like, that's rule number one. A no. So.
Yeah. Rule number one is if you have a gun, carry it, have it on you. And rule number two is don't touch your gun. Just leave it alone, right? Like, that's your secret weapon. It's like, nobody needs to know. I get that. And you might too, Tanya, is because, for women, because we have so many wardrobe options, I carry in a lot of, like secondary sorts of methods, like ankle carry or even thigh holster. I carry a lot of different ways depending on my wardrobe. And I will legitimately have people who know what I do, or if I'm teaching a class and I'm like dressed up, I'll, have like maybe like and I love that bell bottoms are in right now, because I can like ankle carry all day long and no one knows what's up. And I'm like, yes, still look cute. But I'll have people for real just be like, okay, so where are you carrying? And I'm like, that's none of your business.
Right.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. I say this in class, and I get on her sometimes. Don't put your firearm in your purse, lady.
No.
Don't. Because if someone snatched the bag, bye-bye. And I'm not chasing no one.
I talk about this a lot because a lot of women, well, there's like many components to concealed carry for women. And I think one of them is simply just the ability to hide something on your body that's basically a square shape when our bodies are round shape. We have like curves and round parts. So trying to do that, square shape on a round shape is hard. The other part of it is, and a lot of men don't think about this, is that like women have 9 body shapes when it comes to concealed carry, and men have 3, right? Like men are like square, rectangle, or Santa Claus. That's like it. Women, we have like pear shape, we have hourglass, you have like, high-waisted, like short-waisted, there are 9 shapes for women when it comes to concealed carry. And then we have like our fashion choices. So even just if we're wearing jeans, like Tanya and I might wear a different rise of jean, which means we have to wear a different gun, because if I have like a low rise jean, I'm not going to be throwing a Glock 19 in there because we're going to get gun dick, right? Like that's like, no. And then there's also the idea of like the carry industry in general caters to men with a belt and pants. And I'm a big fan of the Filster Enigma holster, and John and Sarah Hopman have like revolutionized concealed carry by creating this. It's basically a carry chassis that a holster attaches to, and it's all separate from clothing. So you don't need pants or a belt anymore, because at the end of the day, one thing they said, that John said this one time, and I was just like, that's brilliant. He's like, so why do we attach our holster to our pants? And we were all kind of like, and he's like, the answer is because it's there. Like, that's why. And that's the way it's been, because concealed carry and holsters were created for men and male wardrobes. But I don't know about you, Tanya, but like if I'm wearing a belt, it's because it's cute. It's not because it's holding my pants up.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
And that's the outfit.
Right. It's a fashion accessory, right? And so like if I'm not always wearing a belt, and women, we're always trying to minimize more bumps and more lumps and more things on our bodies. So the last thing we want is to wear like bulky pants and a bulky like tactical belt just so we have something to put a holster on. So there's a lot of, then there's this whole industry that's risen out of that, which is the concealed carry purse.
Yeah.
There are maybe 2 times in the past 18 months that I've actually carried in a purse, and it was a very deliberate, thought out, agonizing decision that I made, but I really had no other option. So I did that. But even aside from like your purse getting snatched or something like that, is like, what about like access to your gun? Like if you fall over because you have like some kind of a pre-assault kind of thing happening, and then like then the not pre-assault, but like some kind of a physical assault happens, you get knocked to the ground. How are you going to access your gun that's in your bag over there? If my gun's not on my person, I don't have access to it all the time.
Yeah.
And then there's just like the whole idea of when women put a gun in their purse, they're often not buying a concealed carry purse anyway. They're just putting it in, maybe like it, like Uncle Mike's, and throwing it in the purse. I'm like, you're gonna shoot yourself, like, because I know, like, purses get so cluttered and stuff gets in there. And then it's the other thing is like, are you going to the range and practicing? How do you draw out of this? How do you draw from your purse? Like, how do you safely get on target without muzzling yourself, and like the whole downrange problem? Like, how do you address all of these things when you're drawing from a purse? There's so many considerations in there that, it is sort of like shame on the concealed carry purse industry. And there's a lot of companies trying to do better at that, but there's not a lot of education around. It's just kind of like, buy the concealed carry purse, put a gun in there, you're safe. It's like, no.
Yeah. It's practice.
Yeah, which is no different than saying like, I bought a gun, I did the carry class, have my permit, now I know how to defend my life. No, you just started your journey. Like, nothing. Yeah.
And that's another thing. Here we in Illinois, it's so hard to find a range that you to actually draw from your holster, you to actually draw from your purse, things in that nature. Is like, even when I'm online and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, let me look. I look like, oh snap, that's in Utah, that's in Colorado, that's in Tennessee, that's in Georgia. Like, it's nothing literally here in Illinois that I can find. It's through outdoor ranges, but you have to be members. But it's like could a average person cough up, thousands of dollars or a year plus ammo plus, oh well, this holster don't fit. This holster don't work. Like, I'm a advocate of holsters. Like, I got so many, and it's like, don't like that one, don't like this one, don't like that one. Got to send it back. Got to get another one, and it's certain states, and depends on county here in Illinois. It's crazy. Like, we so restricted. Like, so we like, even if we did want to do that, I think it's like one range and it's only one day a week, and it's a Tuesday. Got guns here. You got to take their safety course, even though you got your CCL and everything, but you still have to take their course, and then you're able to, draw from holsters on holster night. So it's not a big thing here yet. Like, as far as, getting practice on drawing, even like in the class, like when we teach in the class, whatever, we have, the prop guns. And I take holsters out there for a reason. Like, we have them lined up and no one touch them. No one wants to like, oh, okay. They just look at it like, oh, for decoration. No, I literally have to tell the students, like, grab a holster, put it on your person. I mean, you don't have a real firearm yet, but you got to get comfortable of like how you going to carry, how you consider. Did you even put a thought in like, oh, I'm gonna carry in my purse, I'm gonna carry appendix, I'm gonna carry 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and I'm not a fan of most of the carry positions due to certain, like how you said, you getting attacked, and Lord forbid you carry 6 o'clock, full in the middle of the deck, and you get pushed over. Yeah, even landing on it and having to draw from it, from your back. It's like you got to push the guy off, or the offender off, just to get, and then you still got to present to get an accurate shot off. It's just so much that goes into that.
And that's assuming that your spine didn't break when you fell on your gun. Like, that's just altogether a bad position for carrying. The blue guns are great for training. And this is another reason why, and I will like always be a broken record about this, Filster's Enigma holster is great for everybody. because it's very customizable and it's separate from wardrobe, it's separate from everything. And it really is like, you can set it up to yourself. And it has, for most of my clients, solved the Rubbermaid of dead holsters, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, I feel like Tanya's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. It's like all of us have that, right? Like this Rubbermaid full of holsters that we tried and didn't work. We throw them to where holsters go to die, But the Enigma has like solved this issue for my clients. Like they get the Enigma and they're like happy. They're like, this is great. It works for them. They're good to go. But, Tennessee, we have, even here, where it's permitless carry in Tennessee. Like, so we are like polar opposites from the Illinois situation. And I coach a lot of my clients about this because we are so close to Illinois that for a lot of my clients driving on vacation or to visit family members, they have to go through Illinois. And I'm always like, so here's the deal. I'm like, you can go on like the US CCA website and on their map of like reciprocity. And I'm like, but here's the deal. I'm like, Illinois is basically like, leave your guns at home. Like,
Yeah.
like they hate guns. It's like hard.
Yeah. Even our laws is kind of like bizarre, like contradict itself. Like, okay, I'm a CCL, I have a FOID, but just say like if I see some ammunition or magazines on sale from out of state, that me living in a certain county, certain city in Illinois, I can't get it shipped to my home. Well, I have to go to the store and purchase the same amount and everything, the same magazine capacity with no problem. So it's
So
like,
weird.
Yeah, it's
so weird.
The laws here is just it's crazy. And you look at, especially we look at certain states and we like, man, Georgia looking like it's the place to be. Texas look like it's the place to be. Tennessee. Like it's it's the state to be, and it's crazy. Even our laws, like I say, it's real dead. Like
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation. And I have this conversation with my clients a lot about, where does the right to carry a firearm come from? And most people say like, oh, the Second Amendment, or, it's like, no, it really doesn't, because it's a God-given right. Like it's a birthright to be able to defend your life. Right.
Yeah.
Like I don't need the Second Amendment to tell me that I have the right to defend my life if it's threatened and I am in danger of death. Like that is like innate to human beings. Like it's innate, like in the wild, right? Like lions don't just go, oh, I'm not allowed to like attack this big lion that's attacking me and going for my jugular. It's like, no, like it's all out. Like it is an innate human instinct, it's innate living instinct to protect your life when attacked. And I think that gets, people get really turned around with like, well, the Second Amendment gives us that right. And like, no, the Second Amendment actually doesn't give you that right. Like that's a very confusing thing, because people think like we derive the right to protect our lives from the Second Amendment, but we don't.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I get real sideways about that. I'm like, like, okay, Second Amendment's cool and all that, but honestly, like our right to self-determination like predates any form of government ever.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like the government making it more of a privilege and a right, like it's a driver license. Like, and that's how I feel like the state of Illinois treats CCL. Like it's a driver license. Like it's not so much of like, oh, okay, because the criminal is still going to get their hands on the gun. The people who actually want to do malicious intent still going to get the firearm, whether it's legal or illegal. But it's like the laws here to me is like it targets the law-abiding citizen, someone like me, someone like my wife, someone like anyone that goes to the 16-hour class. It's kind of bizarre. So that was the whole thing here. Like that's how I feel with our CCL. You get treated more like, oh, it's a state ID driver license.
Yeah, it is such a weird thing. And I think it's not, and not just in Illinois, but particularly more pronounced there just because you guys' laws are so hard to navigate. But there is this sense of like lawful gun owners are the bad guys.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure when criminals got more rights than me. Like, the mall shooting, a couple months ago, the Eli Dickens, right? Because it's like there were the memes went around about this, and RGG actually I think posted like quite a bit about this back then. But really the idea is that like there were two people in that mall that day who were not supposed to have guns, right? But if it hadn't been for the law-abiding citizen with the gun, like who knows how many other people would have been killed.
True.
It's like I'm sure you guys feel this way because you have like for sure a different climate in which you're operating and your conversations are far cry different than the ones I'm having here. But like, how do you convince someone that criminals don't follow the law and they're going to have guns in places where they're not supposed to? You know, that's like, to me, it's like, this is a no brainer. Like, why do I have to explain this to you? Like, criminals don't care about the law.
That's the whole thing here. Well, with throughout the states and other, countries, they still having the problems like some countries you can't have them at all. Like Japan, I think Canada, you can't even own a firearm
Australia.
unless, so when you look at those countries, they always like, look at stupid Americans, like look at the Americans. It's like, so our forefathers brought that into play because what happened in the past, and they didn't want history repeats itself.
Yeah.
So it's not opposed to like, oh, I'm American, not to carry. It's more like, okay, I need something to protect myself, my loved ones, opposed to me dialing 911. Just I'm gonna give you a scenario. It's a video that we play in the class. The guy is on the phone, a break in. The perk is downstairs somewhere in the house. He runs to his room. The operator telling him to barricade himself in the room,
closet,
in the closet.
In the closet. Say, where are you? Are you somewhere safe? Stay in the closet. The police is on his way. He was like, I don't hear any sirens. I don't hear anything. While two people armed in his house trying to rob him, and if they would have saw him, they would have killed him. Period.
Yeah, and
so he took a perp down, and she's like, did you just, I think, kill somebody or shoot somebody or something like that? And he was coming at me. He was coming at me. He had the right to do what he had to do to protect himself. Mm-hmm. But one of the perps ended up running out, and then she told him, oh, can you walk through the house, walk out the side door? I let the police know that's where you're going to be. Yeah. So you want me to walk through a house where I don't even know for sure if the second perp has left?
Yeah.
No. They come and find me.
It's like they want us to protect the life and sovereignty of the criminal. Like, don't shoot that bad guy. But like, also you might get shot and that's okay. It's like, I'm sorry, no, like I'm just minding my own business at home. So we have in Tennessee castle doctrine. And our castle doctrine here extends to your car too, which is like, you don't have to have, well, and before, so we went permitless carry in January of last year, but even prior to that, we had castle doctrine, which here says that, like you have the right to be safe and comfortable in your own home and your king in your castle kind of thing. And it extends to your vehicle, which is to say that even without a permit prior to when we, went permitless, any Tennessean or person in Tennessee could have a gun in their home or in their car, and it's not illegal. Like they recognize like, hey, you have the right to be safe at home.
Right.
And like then there are crazy things like in California where they do the like you have to fire a warning shot first, so people like shoot the bad guy and then fire a second time to be like, yeah, I fired the first time and it didn't work. It's like that. No, that's stupid. Like you step into my house, you definitely mean harm. Like I'm not going to stand there and ask you like, excuse me, kind sir, why did you just walk in my front door without knocking? Like, why did you beat my door down with that knife in your hand? Are we like, would you like some dinner? Would you like me to fix you a plate to go? It's like, no, a person coming into your home has really bad intentions, and violent crime proves that like if somebody gets in your house and shit happens to you, like I'm going to solve that problem real quick.
Yeah. And most states even have a law in place. You got to retreat, right?
A lot of states have a duty to retreat. Yeah.
Yeah. Like at that point, it's like, it's almost like even when we taking our TCL, like the instructor was like, and I use this model too, like, I can't tell you if they haven't signed up not to carry or to carry. That's something that you have to, face the fact. Like, okay, that's because the sign up is policy. It's not law. Policy don't override law. But that's something that if it was me, I can deal and I can live with, okay, yes, I shouldn't been carrying, but also I can live with the fact that my family's still alive, I'm still alive, and even though I got to do jail time, I'm okay with that. But I can't make that decision for my students. I can't make that decision for my wife, and I let them know that, like when I'm like, that's me, So that's something that you got to weigh. That person got to weigh for themselves, opposed to, oh, well, the instructor said this. No, 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 no. I said,
Yeah,
I.
and that's a weird thing as an instructor too. It's like the liability you take on for the things that you teach your students, right? Like if I say to my
Yeah,
students, "Hey, I carry in non-permissive environments, and you should
yeah,
too." Like now, like when that person ends up at a mall that has posted no firearms, and then there's a shooting, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I take lessons. Who do you learn with?" "Oh well, Kristin at She Shoots." "Okay, what is she? What did she teach you?" "Well, she told me that she carries where she's not supposed to, and that I should too." And
yeah,
like now, all of a sudden, my ass is on the line. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
yeah. And
So it's
then,
like
yeah,
it's a dance. But I'm with you. Like again, Eli Dicken, like he wasn't supposed to have a gun there, neither was the bad guy, but like, is anybody pressing charges against him for saving the lives of like 50, 60, 70, who knows how many people?
that situation, I would rather have mine than not to have it.
Mhm.
And that's the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's interesting because in Tennessee, we do have a law where if a business has posted no firearms allowed or gun-free zone or whatever, it is actually supported by the law if it has the Tennessee, like the code, it'll say like TCA, Tennessee Code annotated, and then cites the section of state code that, that cites the gun laws. So here, a place can post no guns and is technically supported by the law as long as the sign is a specific certain way. And it has to be very
Oh,
visibly
wow.
posted. It has to be like out front, visible. But outside of that, like Tennessee still is very gun friendly. It really
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Um,
jumping out.
Yeah.
yeah, you're like, wait, we
Yeah,
can take our gun in a bar? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Even Vegas, I think they just changed their laws. You to have your firearm in the casino.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the casino. But
Wow. I'm gonna look that
yeah,
up. That's wild. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm back to Bugsy
So
Malone days.
yeah.
That's so
So
crazy. Yeah.
and then we have a section of the show, things about Kristin that you want the listeners
Oh my gosh.
to.
There's so many things. Actually, it's funny because on my Instagram, I've started doing Friday 5, which is like 5 things about me that have nothing to do with guns, just like to get, people get to know you. Because I find that helps like humanize me, that like then other ladies are like, oh, you're just a
Yeah.
regular human. Like you're not just this one-dimensional Lara Croft, right? You're like an actual human being that I can relate to. Like that's a cool thing. So this is always fun. Okay, so 3 things about me. Oh my gosh. I used to be a professional hula hooper.
Oh,
Okay.
I love hula hooping.
You do? Oh my gosh. Well, then you should go look at Friday 5 from a couple weeks ago because I posted a video. I also hula hoop with fire. So you would love that video. This is my fire hooping. Okay, so I used to be a professional hula hooper. Oh, okay, here's another fun one. I actually went to school to be an opera singer. So that's actually what I'm trained to do, is to be an opera singer.
I think I'm an opera singer.
You're what?
I say I think I'm an opera singer. My students laugh because I have to like teach them words and using the opera voice. And they're
Yeah.
like, Princess Robert.
See, look, we're basically the same human. It's great. Okay, and a third thing about me. Oh gosh, I don't know. There's so many things. I was born and raised in the ice cream capital of the world. That's a fun one.
There you
So,
go.
so I love me some ice cream.
So where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so I have Facebook and Instagram, She Shoots Training, and then my website is sheshootstraining.com. And then, of course, like I said, I'm a staff trainer at the Glock store as well. Our range there is Shoot 270, so shoot270.com. That's also where my She Shoots clients I train at. They're so great. They let me teach my clients out of the range there as well, as being a staff trainer there. So She Shoots Training on Instagram and Facebook, and then the Shoot 270 at Glock store.